On the distant planet of Avalora, the air shimmered with soft light that seemed to come from nowhere. The world was quiet, peaceful, and beautiful. Its inhabitants, the Sarai, were a highly intelligent species. They had slender, graceful forms, smooth skin that reflected colors like glass, and eyes that could see in wavelengths humans could not imagine. Their civilization was advanced, their technology seamless, and their minds curious. They had explored stars and discovered countless species across galaxies, but there was one species that no one on Avalord had studied carefully yet: humans. Lyra stood in the grand observation chamber, adjusting a panel of controls in front of her. She was young, ambitious, and proud of her work. She had studied many species, but humans were the most unusual assignment she had received. They had been brought to Avalora for peaceful study. The records described humans as small, slow, fragile, and generally harmless. Lyra had read the files carefully, convinced that she was prepared for whatever she might see. Yet, deep down, she felt a strange mix of excitement and doubt. There was something in the way the humans had been described that made her uneasy. "You're overthinking again," her colleague, Sorin, said from behind her. His voice was soft but full of amusement. "They are humans, Lyra. Harmless. You'll barely need to study them. Just watch. Take notes. Easy." Lyra smiled politely, but didn't respond. She knew humans were underestimated. Something in her instincts whispered that there was more to them than the report said. A soft hum filled the room as the transport ship from Earth arrived in the docking bay. Its hull was small, metallic, and unassuming, barely larger than a Sarai research vessel. From inside, a group of humans emerged. They were awkward, moving slowly, unsure of their surroundings. Lyra's first impression matched the files: small, fragile, and harmless. The humans were led by Evan Cole, a man in his late 20s. He had dark hair, calm eyes, and a quiet confidence that somehow seemed to contradict his appearance. As he stepped into the observation chamber, Lyra felt something unusual, though she didn't understand it yet. "Welcome to Avalora," she said formally, stepping forward. Her voice echoed softly in the high-ceilinged room. "I am Lyra, assigned to study your species. Please follow me to the research quarters." Evan's gaze met hers for the first time, and that was the moment she felt it. Strange spark, unexplainable, and subtle, like the faint vibration of an unseen drum in her chest. She quickly looked away, pretending to focus on the controls. She told herself it was imagination, but a small part of her mind refused to accept that. As Lyra guided the humans through the facility, she observed them carefully as they stumbled, occasionally bumping into doors and panels, struggling to adapt to alien technology. Yet there was something about them that drew her attention. Their movements, though untrained, were deliberate. They looked around with curiosity, absorbing everything like sponges. And when they spoke to each other quietly, there was a sense of planning, of thoughtfulness, that reminded Lyra of nothing she had seen before. In the study room, Lyra began the formal examination. Sensors scanned the humans' vitals, their reflexes, and their basic biology. Notes appeared on her display. Everything seemed normal, even weak, compared to Sarai physiology. Lyra almost sighed with relief. Maybe they were as harmless as the files said. "Is this species aggressive?" Sorin asked from the doorway. He was taller than Lyra, with a calm, analytical presence. "Not at all," Lyra replied. "They are small, weak, and slow. Perfectly harmless." But as she spoke, Evan stepped closer, observing the instruments with quiet interest. He leaned slightly over the console, his hand brushing against a sensor. And in a movement almost too fast to follow, he adjusted the machine correctly. Lyra blinked. That should have taken 10 minutes of her instruction, but he did it instantly. "You did that very fast," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "It looked like it needed fixing," he replied simply, with a calm smile. There was no arrogance, only focus. Lyra felt that spark again, the same feeling when she first met his gaze. It was a flicker of something she couldn't name, something that said this human was not what he appeared to be. Over the next few days, Lyra continued her study. She watched the humans eat, sleep, and interact with their surroundings. They seemed fragile, as predicted. They could not lift the heavier SCIFI devices, and they moved awkwardly in the low gravity of Avalora. Yet every day, she noticed moments where they surprised her. Evan learned alien languages faster than anyone expected. He seemed to understand complex instructions almost instinctively. Lyra began to notice subtle reflexes, like the way he avoided minor accidents before they happened, or the way he steadied his companions during small falls. One morning, while observing a routine experiment with gravity simulators, a panel on the ceiling shook loose. It fell directly toward Lyra. She froze, unable to move fast enough. But Evan reacted immediately. In one swift movement, he grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the way, placing himself between her and danger. The panel crashed to the floor with a metallic crash, dust filling the room. Lyra's heart raced. She had never expected such reflexes from a human. She looked up at Evan, his eyes calm, steady, and focused. "You're lucky," he said softly, helping her steady herself. I should have moved," Lyra stammered. She felt an unfamiliar heat of admiration mixed with surprise. "I didn't think you didn't expect," he finished for her, almost like reading her thoughts. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her quarters, thinking about the humans and especially Evan. The reports had been wrong, were not completely harmless. There was a strength beneath their calm, a determination she had not anticipated. Something, deep in their eyes, something ancient and stubborn, reminded her of old SCIFI legends about brave heroes and unexpected courage. The next morning, she returned to the observation chamber with renewed focus. She watched as the humans moved through their daily routines. Even when tasks were difficult, they did not give up. When a small puzzle in their training module seemed impossible, Evan tried again and again, learning from every failure. Lyra began to realize that humans had a different kind of strength, a quiet, persistent force that the SCIFI rarely saw in other species. When Evan's eyes met hers again, something inside her shifted. She could no longer see him as simply fragile or harmless. In those dark, calm eyes, she saw awareness, focus, and courage. It was as if he could understand the world on a level she could not reach. For a moment, she wondered what humans had endured on their homeworld to develop such patience, such resilience. Serene noticed her attention and raised an eyebrow. "You're distracted," he said lightly. "Don't let them charm you." Lyra smiled faintly, but didn't answer. She was beginning to understand that it was not charm she felt, it was awe, something she could not name. By the end of the week, Lyra had adjusted her approach. She no longer treated humans as merely subjects to study. She observed them carefully, noting their hidden strengths, their adaptability, and their unusual instincts. Evan, in particular, seemed to carry a quiet confidence that was impossible to ignore. One evening, as she finished her notes, Evan approached her quietly. "You look tired," he said in his calm voice. "I am," Lyra admitted. "It is much work to study your species." "You're learning more than expected," he said, as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. "Sometimes we surprise people." Lyra looked into his eyes, and for the first time she felt a shiver of recognition. Not fear, but realization. This human, and perhaps all humans, were far more than they seemed. Her belief that humans were harmless was beginning to crumble, and she did not know if she was ready for the truth that was coming, because something about Evan's gaze told her. One simple thing: humans could endure, adapt, and protect themselves in ways the SCIFI could not yet imagine. And Lyra was about to learn just how powerful that truth could be. The morning sun cast long, pale shadows across the smooth, glass-like floors of the Avalor research facility. Lyra stood at the edge of the observation hall, eyes fixed on Evan as he moved among the other humans. She had spent the past week watching him, learning not only about him, but also about the species he represented. Every day, she found herself more curious and more unsettled. Evan was calm, polite, and seemingly unremarkable at first glance. He did not rush, did not complain, and did not panic when things went wrong. But Lyra had begun to notice small details, tiny actions that seemed instinctive, yet impossible to teach. How he adjusted delicate instruments without guidance. How he predicted the movement of objects and people in the room. And how he solved problems that would normally take hours of careful planning. Lyra said from behind her, "You've been observing that one human more than the others. Don't get distracted." "I am not distracted," Lyra said quickly, though her mind was already occupied with questions. "I am studying behavior. It is important to notice patterns." Sarn only shrugged. "Patterns, yes. But do not let fascination cloud your judgment." Lyra nodded politely, though she could feel the unease growing in her chest. There was something about Evan that went beyond learning speed or calmness. It was a kind of awareness that reminded her of the Sarai heroes of old, the ones who could anticipate danger before it arrived, who acted decisively in moments of crisis. That afternoon, a routine experiment in the gravity simulation chamber provided the first real test. The humans were instructed to move small weights using their hands and simple tools. While sensors measured their reflexes, coordination, and problem-solving, most humans struggled, as expected, dropping weights or fumbling with tools. But Evan's movements were precise, fast, and calculated. He adapted immediately when the device malfunctioned, correcting the error in seconds while keeping the other humans safe. Lyra's eyes widened. How did he do that so fast? She murmured to herself. Sarn, observing beside her, raised an eyebrow. It is unusual. Most species need weeks, even months, to learn simple, adaptive tasks. That human, he is exceptional. Evan glanced at her as if sensing her surprise. Their eyes met for a brief moment. In that instant, Lyra felt a strange quiet power emanating from him that she could not explain. It was not aggression nor arrogance. It was calm, focus, determination, and confidence all at once. She looked away, pretending to check her notes, but her thoughts were tangled. The next day brought another surprise. Lyra had been reviewing genetic data when a small accident occurred in the lab. A containment unit holding delicate alien samples began to tip over. Without thinking, she lunged forward, but Evan was already there, steadying the unit and preventing it from crashing. His reaction was instant, precise, and without hesitation. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking slightly. She could feel her heart racing. "You acted so quickly." I couldn't have done that in time," Evan smiled faintly. "I noticed it moving before you did. I just acted. It was not just speed or strength, it was instinct." Lyra had never seen a species react so efficiently to unexpected danger without formal training. Humans were supposed to be fragile and slow, yet here was proof that they could move faster and think quicker than her own kind. As the week progressed, Lyra began to document these behaviors carefully. She observed Evan learning Sarai technology at a speed that no one else could match. He could operate machinery intuitively, understand alien symbols without guidance, and anticipate problems before they occurred. Even the smallest actions revealed his adaptability. During one session, Lyra tested reflexes using a holographic obstacle course. Humans were asked to navigate a maze of floating platforms that shifted unpredictably. Most stumbled and fell multiple times. Evan, however, moved smoothly, anticipating the movement of platforms and adjusting his steps before the platforms even shifted. "You're remarkable," Lyra said softly. Unable to hide her amazement, Evan looked at her calmly. "I've learned to adapt. It is what humans do." "What do you mean?" she asked, intrigued. "We survive by learning quickly. We adjust. We try again when we fail. That is how we manage dangers in our world," he said simply. Lyra could not help but compare her species to his. The Sarai were intelligent, yes, but they rarely faced danger in the same way. Their world was safe, their lives long and planned. Humans, on the other hand, seemed to carry a resilience born of struggle. It was in their nature to endure, adapt, and overcome. That evening, Lyra reviewed her notes alone. Her observations were turning into something more than data. She had expected harmless subjects. She had found something extraordinary. There was a quiet power in humans, a hidden strength that had been overlooked for centuries. And Evan, with his calm eyes and precise actions, was the perfect example. Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint alarm. A small research drone had malfunctioned, releasing a puff of pressurized gas that swept through the hall. Several humans froze, coughing and struggling to avoid the cloud. Evan, as always, acted immediately. He grabbed two of his companions, pulling them to safety, while guiding the others toward the exit. Lyra watched, astonished. Not only did he act quickly, but he did so without panicking, and without hesitation. When the gas cleared, she approached him. "You saved them. All of them, that was. Incredible." "It was necessary," Evan replied simply, shrugging. I just did what needed to be done." And yet Lyra knew it was more than instinct. There was control, intelligence, and courage in his actions. Something deep in his gaze told her that humans could survive challenges that even the Sarai had not imagined. The days passed, and Lyra found herself increasingly fascinated by Evan. She began to speak with him during breaks, asking about Earth, about humans, about how they lived and survived. Each story she heard revealed a species shaped by struggle, creativity, and perseverance. Humans had faced harsh environments, dangerous predators, and conflicts that forced them to adapt quickly. They had learned to work together, to think on their feet, to protect one another. "You see humans as weak," Evan said one day, noticing her thoughtful silence. "But we are built to endure. We may not be fast or strong in every situation, but we survive. That is our strength." Lyra nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "I had thought you were harmless. But now, I see something different, something I cannot ignore." "You will see more," Evan said quietly, a faint smile on his face. "Humans are full of surprises." That night, Lyra could not sleep. She lay on her cot, staring at the pale ceiling of her quarters. She thought about the accidents, the challenges, and the moments when Evan had acted instinctively to protect others. She realized that her original assumptions about humans were completely wrong. They were not weak. They were not slow. They were not harmless. And one thought in particular stayed with her: his eyes. There was something in them that she could not forget. Calm, focused, and unyielding. A spark of determination that seemed almost alive. It was not fear, not anger, not aggression. It was a quiet, unshakable courage that made her question everything she had believed about the universe. The next day, she watched as humans trained in the facility's simulation chambers. Most stumbled, but Evan moved through every challenge with precision. He corrected mistakes, helped others, and solved problems that Lyra did not think humans could even comprehend. Sauron, noticing her attention, leaned over. "Still fascinated?" he asked. I think I am beginning to understand," Lyra replied softly. "They are. Different. Stronger than I imagined. Smarter in ways I did not expect," Sauron nodded. "Do not underestimate them, but be careful. Sometimes fascination can cloud judgment." Lyra smiled faintly, but deep down, she knew fascination was only the beginning. She had glimpsed something extraordinary in the humans, something the Sarai had ignored for centuries. And she had a feeling that what she had seen in Evan's eyes was only the start of a much larger truth. For the first time, she realized that humans were not harmless. They were resilient, adaptable, and capable of surprising even the most advanced species. And she knew, somewhere deep inside, that this discovery would change not only her understanding of humans, but also the course of her own life. Because when she looked into his eyes again, she knew he was not just a human. He was the first glimpse of a species that could endure anything. And Lyra was ready to see what came next. The research facility on Avalora had been quiet for days, and Lyra thought the humans were settling into their routines. Yet, she could not shake the feeling that something was coming, something unexpected. Her instincts had rarely failed, and the uneasy feeling in her chest grew stronger with each passing hour. It began subtly. Security sensors detected small, unidentified signals near the outer perimeter of the facility. At first, the alerts were ignored as minor glitches, but Lyra noticed the pattern. The readings were irregular, almost intelligent, moving in ways that suggested planning rather than random. Interference. She mentioned it to the Sarai Council during a routine meeting. "I believe there may be a threat approaching," she said, trying to sound calm. "It is not confirmed, but the signals are unusual." The council nodded politely but dismissed her concerns. The Sarai had few enemies, and their advanced defenses were considered more than sufficient. Lyra's warnings were seen as cautionary, unnecessary perhaps. But inside, she could feel the tension rising. Her instincts told her that the humans might soon face something beyond observation or study. Later that evening, as the humans trained in the simulation chambers, the alarms blared. Red lights flashed, echoing through the facility's halls. A hostile alien faction had breached the outer defenses, moving swiftly toward the research labs. Panic spread among the human visitors, their eyes wide with fear. Lyra's own heart raced. She was trained in emergency protocols, but this was different. These intruders were fast, intelligent, and armed with technology far beyond human standards. She could see the humans freeze, unsure of how to respond. But then she saw Evan. He did not hesitate. His calm eyes scanned the room, noting every detail. He directed other humans with clear instructions, moving with a speed and precision that made the Sarai observers gasp. Where others panicked, he acted. Where doors were blocked, he found alternatives. Where danger was immediate, he protected those around him without hesitation. Lyra felt herself drawn to him, watching in awe as he led his group through the maze of hallways and corridors. His movements were almost effortless, yet deliberate. Every decision was calculated, every step precise. It was as if he had lived 1,000 lives of survival in one. "Follow me," Evan shouted calmly to the humans nearest him, guiding them through a side passage to avoid a group of intruders. Lyra realized something astonishing. She was seeing human instinct in action, raw and unfiltered. They had been described as weak, fragile, and harmless, but Evan was proof of the opposite. He had the courage, strength, quick thinking that her species had rarely seen. The intruders struck suddenly, forcing Lyra to step back. She had been trained for such emergencies, but even she felt overwhelmed by the speed and strategy of the attackers. A panel above her shook, threatening to collapse. She froze. Then, almost without thinking, Evan appeared, reaching for her arm and pulling her to safety. "Are you okay?" he asked, his eyes scanning for more threats. I am Lyra," stammered, her voice trembling. She realized she had never seen a human move with such confidence in life-or-death situations. Evan did not answer. He was already moving, guiding a group of humans and Sarai assistants toward a safe zone. Lyra followed, her heart pounding. Every step revealed more about him, his ability to assess danger, to protect others, to remain calm when others were frozen with fear. They reached a secure chamber where they could regroup. Lyra helped seal the doors as the humans caught their breath, their faces pale but relieved. She turned to Evan. How are you so calm?" she asked, unable to hide her astonishment. Evan looked at her, his eyes steady. "Calm does not mean weak. It means focus. When danger comes, you act. You protect. You survive. That is what humans do." Lyra could not argue. She had seen it firsthand. He had acted faster than she could comprehend, guided others to safety, and remained composed in a crisis that would have paralyzed even the most experienced Sarai. But the danger was not over. The intruders had not given up. They bypassed outer defenses, moving closer to the core of the facility. Lyra and the humans were trapped with no immediate reinforcements. She could feel fear creeping in, but she refused to show it. Evan's eyes met hers again, and for a moment she felt a strange connection, something beyond language, beyond explanation. In those dark, calm eyes, she saw focus, courage, and a strength that transcended physical ability. It was almost as if he could see through the chaos and understand exactly what needed to be done. "Stay close to me," he said, motioning for the humans to follow. "Keep calm and move only when I signal." Lyra felt a mix of awe and trust. Against all expectations, she obeyed. She followed Evan through narrow corridors and twisting passages, marveling at his awareness. He seemed to anticipate every obstacle, every threat, every movement of the intruders. They reached the inner control chamber, the heart of the research facility. Here, the attackers could cause the most damage if they breached the defenses. Lyra realized that if Evan and the humans did not act quickly, years of work and countless lives could be lost. Evan took command immediately. "We need to activate the security protocols and seal the main systems. Lyra, I need your help to override the central controls. Others, follow my instructions carefully." Lyra nodded, impressed by his clarity. She had assumed humans were limited in their understanding of complex systems. But Evan worked with a calm efficiency, guiding her hands and explaining steps with simple, clear language. She realized that humans, when focused, could learn and adapt faster than she had imagined. As they worked, small skirmishes erupted outside the control room. The intruders tried to force entry, but Evan stayed composed. He coordinated the humans, using their strengths while protecting the weaker members. Lyra watched in amazement as he displayed courage, strategy, and patience all at once. Finally, after tense minutes that felt like hours, the systems activated. Security doors sealed, defense drones powered on, and the intruders were contained. The alarms silenced, leaving only the hum of the facility's machinery. Lyra let out a long breath. We did it," she said, still shaking. Evan looked at her calm but exhausted. "We survived. That is what matters." She could not stop herself from studying him. In his eyes, she saw more than intelligence or bravery. She saw a spark of life that refused to yield, a strength that came not from technology or training, but from something deep within the human spirit. It was a force that her species had rarely encountered, a resilience that seemed almost limitless. For the first time, Lyra understood that her original assumptions had been completely wrong. Humans were not fragile, not harmless. They were warriors in their own right, not with weapons alone, but with courage, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt under pressure. When the council arrived later, praising the surviving humans and Sci-Fi assistants, Lyra spoke up. "Do not underestimate them," she said firmly. "They may appear small and weak, but they are capable of extraordinary courage. They adapt, they endure, and they protect." Evan Cole. He is an example of what humans can do. The council exchanged cautious glances. Many were reluctant to accept her words fully, bound by centuries of assumptions. But Lyra knew the truth, and she would not let it be ignored. That night, as the facility settled back into calm, Lyra found herself unable to sleep. She walked to the observation deck, looking out over Avalora's glowing landscape. The stars shimmered, distant and beautiful. But her mind was focused on something else. Anna-san, Evan, on the humans. And on the hidden strength she had witnessed, she thought of his eyes. Calm and unwavering in the chaos, and realized she had underestimated not just the humans, but the power of determination, courage, and the will to survive. And she knew that the story of humanity on Avalora was only beginning. Because when she looked into his eyes that day, she saw something no Sarai had seen before: warrior spirit. Quiet but unstoppable, a spark that would not be ignored. The days following the attack were tense, but quieter. The intruders had been driven back, yet the Sci-Fi Council remained cautious. They increased security and monitored all activity carefully. Lyra returned to her research duties, but her thoughts were no longer on simple observations. They were on Evan and the humans. She noticed the subtle ways he cared for the others, how he instinctively guided them through even the simplest tasks, correcting mistakes without scolding, how he remained calm when pressure rose, whether in experiments or in minor accidents. Lyra had studied many species in her career, but none displayed such a combination of instinct, intelligence, and empathy. Humans were more remarkable than she had imagined. One morning, Lyra was reviewing genetic data when an alert flashed on her console. A new breach had been detected in the external sensor network. The intruders were not gone. They had returned stealthier and smarter this time. Panic surged through the facility. Sirens blared and red lights flashed across the hallways. Lyra's heart raced, but she focused on her training. She moved toward the control center, expecting Evan and the humans to follow. As she turned a corner, she saw him calmly assessing the situation, eyes scanning every readout and camera feed. "Evan," she called. "They're back." He looked at her calmly. "I know. Stay close. Don't panic. We will handle this." His voice was steady, but there was a strength in it that inspired confidence. Lyra felt herself trusting him completely. She followed him as he led the humans through secure passages toward the inner chamber. Every step he took was deliberate, every decision calculated. As they moved, Lyra began to notice something she hadn't before. She was not just observing Evan. She was connected to him in some subtle, almost invisible way. When he glanced at her, she instinctively knew what he wanted, what he intended to do next. She felt guided, protected, and reassured. There was an unspoken understanding between them that transcended words. They reached the central control hub, where the security systems could be activated to contain the intruders. Lyra quickly assisted, following Evan's instructions. He guided her hand to override a malfunctioning console, and together they managed to reactivate the defense protocols. While they worked, small alarms indicated intruder movement near the main corridor. Lyra felt a pang of fear. She had faced danger before, but never so direct, so close. Evan noticed her hesitation. "Look at me," he said softly. She met his eyes. "Focus. You know what to do. Trust yourself and trust me." It was a simple phrase, yet it calmed her completely. In that moment, she understood something profound. Humans had a bond that was built on trust and action, even in strangers. And Evan had shared that bond with her, silently, without explanation. With the systems now active, defense drones deployed, and security doors locked, the intruders were temporarily contained. The humans, though nervous, followed Evan's instructions perfectly, moving in coordination with the automated defenses. Lyra observed with admiration. Even in the midst of chaos, Evan guided everyone with patience and clarity. "You're extraordinary," she whispered. When they paused for a moment of calm, he glanced at her, a faint smile forming. "Extraordinary is doing what must be done. That is all." But Lyra knew it was more than that. There was courage in his calm, intelligence in his strategy, and a deep empathy in the way he looked after others. She realized that humans possessed a rare combination of traits: focus, resilience, and compassion. Traits that made them unpredictable, even to the most advanced species. The intruders made a sudden push. Trying to breach the inner chamber, Evan acted immediately. He positioned himself between the humans and the threat, directing others to safer locations. Lyra noticed his hands moved instinctively, adjusting controls, opening doors, and using every resource available to protect the group. "You don't hesitate," she said quietly, awe in her voice. "I do," he replied. "I just don't let hesitation stop me from acting. Fear can be controlled. Action cannot be delayed." The intruders tried to force the doors, but Evan had anticipated their movements. He activated emergency locks and redirected defense drones to intercept the attackers. The humans followed his instructions precisely, inspired by his calm authority. Lyra felt a surge of admiration. This was more than strategy, it was leadership. After the immediate threat was neutralized, the facility fell silent. The humans had survived, the intruders were contained, and the systems were secure. Lyra turned to Evan, still catching her breath. How do you stay so calm?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. He looked at her, calm and steady. "Calm does not mean fearless. It means understanding what is necessary and acting on it. Panic accomplishes nothing. Focus accomplishes everything." Lyra nodded slowly. She had seen the truth in his words. Humans were not simply survivors. They were thinkers, learners, and protectors, even under extreme stress. And Evan exemplified this perfectly. Over the next few days, Lyra and Evan worked closely together, repairing minor damages and assisting the humans in understanding the facility's systems. During these hours, their bond deepened. Lyra found that she could anticipate Evan's instructions before he spoke, and he seemed to understand her thoughts without words. One afternoon, while recalibrating a sensor array, Lyra made a mistake that could have caused the system to fail. She froze, uncertain of what to do. Before panic could take over, Evan's hand rested lightly on hers. "Breathe," he said quietly. "You know what to do. I trust you." His calm confidence gave her strength. She corrected the error successfully, and the system stabilized. Lyra realized something important. It was not only his skill that impressed her, but also his ability to instill trust and confidence in those around him. That evening, they walked along the observation deck, overlooking Avalora's glowing forests. The stars shimmered above them, pale and distant. For a long while, neither spoke. The events of the past days weighed heavily, but Lyra felt a sense of peace she had not known before. "You saved them all," she said finally. Breaking the silence, "It was necessary," he replied simply. "No," she insisted, looking into his eyes. "It was more than necessary. You guided them, protected them, inspired them. You are remarkable." Evan looked away briefly, then back at her. "Remarkable is not what matters. Action matters. Courage matters. What you saw was what humans do when they must. That is all." But Lyra could see it. She could see the quiet heroism in his eyes, the determination that refused to waver, and the bond that had formed silently between them. Something unspoken, almost invisible, had connected them during the danger. A trust that was rare, precious, and strong. Over the next week, Lyra documented every moment carefully. She observed humans, their behavior, their resilience, and their subtle strengths. She noted how they learned quickly, how they adapted, and how they formed bonds that amplified their abilities. Every observation reinforced what she had begun to understand. Humans were underestimated, even by the most advanced species in the galaxy, and in the center of her studies was Evan, whose calm eyes, precise actions, and quiet courage had revealed to her the true potential of his species. He had shown her that humans were more than they seemed, stronger, faster, and braver than anyone had believed. By the end of the week, Lyra realized that she no longer saw humans as simple subjects of study. She saw them as a species of warriors, not in the sense of violence, but in resilience, intelligence, and the will to protect one another. And she felt a quiet bond forming between herself and Evan. A connection that went beyond words and instincts. Born from shared experience and mutual respect, when she looked at him, she no longer saw just a human. She saw a protector, a guide, and a reflection of the hidden strength of humanity. And she knew that the coming challenges would reveal even more about the species she had once thought harmless, because when she looked into his eyes, she saw courage, determination, and something far greater than herself, a glimpse of humanity's true spirit. And Lyra knew that their journey together was only just beginning. The night after the second attack was quiet, almost eerily so. The facility's red lights had faded, the alarms silenced, and the intruders had retreated, at least for now. Lyra walked slowly along the observation deck, her mind still buzzing from the chaos of the past days. She had seen humans in action, had watched Evan guide them with calm precision, and had witnessed courage that she had never imagined possible. Yet, despite the danger being over for the moment, a new unease lingered. She knew the intruders would return, and the facility would not always be as prepared. But she also knew that the humans, with Evan at their center, had the ability to survive and even thrive in challenges far beyond what most Sarai had experienced. Evan appeared beside her quietly. "You are still thinking," he said softly, his calm eyes meeting hers. "I am," Lyra admitted. "I can't stop. I keep thinking about what we faced, and what could come next." He nodded slowly. "That is good. Thinking is important, but you must also trust what you have seen. Humans, we adapt. We endure, and we act when necessary. Lyra studied him. His words were simple, but the meaning was profound. They carried a truth that she had begun to understand. Humanity's strength was not only in muscle or technology, but in courage, creativity, and the will to protect others. The next day, the council called an emergency meeting. The intruders' retreat had been temporary. They were regrouping, planning a larger assault. The council debated strategies, but their solutions relied heavily on advanced technology and automated systems. Lyra realized immediately that, while useful, this approach ignored something crucial: the adaptability of humans. "I have an idea," Lyra said, standing before the council. "We have relied on technology to protect ourselves. But humans can act in ways machines cannot. They think quickly, adapt instantly, and make choices that machines cannot predict. We should use their skills, not just our defenses." The council exchanged skeptical glances. Many Sarai had never considered involving humans in active defense strategies. But Lyra pressed on. "Evan Cole and the humans can lead. They can anticipate moves, protect our people, and respond in ways that automated systems cannot. We underestimate them at our own risk." The room fell silent. Finally, a senior council member spoke. "Very well, Lyra. Show us what they can do." Lyra turned to find Evan waiting patiently. His calm demeanor inspired confidence. He had faced danger twice and had not faltered. He seemed ready to face whatever came next. The plan was simple, but daring. Lyra, Evan, and a group of humans would be stationed in the facility's central hub, prepared to act against any intrusion. Defense drones would provide support, but the humans would make real-time decisions, anticipating the intruders' moves. As they prepared, Lyra observed the humans closely. She had studied their species for days. But now she saw them in a different light, not as subjects of observation, but as allies, warriors in their own right. Evan moved among them calmly, offering guidance, encouragement, and reassurance. "Remember," he said quietly, speaking to both humans and Lyra, "we act with focus. We adapt. We survive. And we protect those who cannot protect themselves." When the intruders finally arrived, they were stronger, faster, and more organized than before. But the humans were ready. Evan directed them with precision, anticipating the attackers' movements and guiding the team to cover in advantageous positions. Lyra worked alongside him, operating consoles and coordinating security systems with his guidance. The battle was intense but controlled. The humans moved fluidly, protecting each other, responding to threats, and improvising solutions when unexpected challenges arose. Evan remained at the center, calm and focused, coordinating the defense with a quiet authority that inspired trust and confidence in everyone around him. Lyra watched, all growing with each passing moment. She had once thought humans were fragile and harmless. Now, she saw them for what they truly were: resilient, intelligent, capable of facing threats no Sarai alone could have managed. They were not only surviving, they were thriving in the face of danger. At a critical moment, a group of intruders breached the outer chamber. Evan acted instantly, moving to intercept them and guiding others to safety. Lyra followed, trusting his instincts completely. Together, they neutralized the threat, closing doors and activating emergency systems in perfect coordination. When the last intruder was contained, the facility fell silent. Lyra could feel her pulse racing, not from fear, but from exhilaration. The humans had succeeded where even advanced technology alone might have failed. And Evan, with his calm eyes and steady leadership, had been the heart of it all. Afterward, the council gathered again. Lyra stepped forward, proud and certain. "Do not underestimate humans," she said firmly. "They are not fragile. They are not harmless. They are brave, adaptable, and intelligent. Evan Cole is proof of their potential. We have been given allies, not subjects." The council members looked at her thoughtfully, slowly recognizing the truth in her words. The humans had shown courage, quick thinking, and leadership beyond expectation. Lyra had seen firsthand that their strength went beyond physical ability. It was in their spirit, their determination, and their will to protect one another. later. As the facility returned to routine, Lyra and Evan walked along the observation deck. The stars glittered in the night sky, distant and serene. For a long time, neither spoke, each reflecting on what had passed. "You have changed my understanding," Lyra said finally. "I thought humans were fragile, simple, but now I see humans are more than I ever imagined." Evan smiled faintly. "Humans are full of surprises. That is why we endure." Lyra nodded. She looked into his eyes and saw what she had seen from the beginning: courage, focus, and the strength to face impossible odds. It was not only a reflection of him, but of the entire human species. And for the first time, she understood the depth of what she had learned. "You have taught me something important," she said softly. "Not just about humans, but about courage, resilience, and trust. I see now why your species has survived against so much adversity." Evan looked at her steadily. "You have learned quickly. That is good. Trust and action, those are what matter most." Lyra smiled. She realized that this experience had changed her not just professionally, but personally. She had grown to understand humans in a way no Sarai had before. She had seen their courage, their adaptability, and their quiet heroism. And she had formed a bond with one human that she could not explain, born of shared challenges, trust, and respect. As Evan prepared to return to Earth, the humans gathered in the docking bay. Lyra watched as he boarded his small ship, the engines humming softly. She felt a pang of sadness, but also pride. She had witnessed a species rise to the occasion, revealing their hidden strength and potential before leaving. Evan turned to Lyra. "You will remember what you saw," he said quietly. "Humans do not always appear strong, but we always try. And sometimes, that is enough to change the course of events." Lyra nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had learned more than she could have imagined. Humanity was no longer just a subject of study, it was a force, resilient and enduring, capable of facing dangers and surviving with courage and ingenuity. As the ship lifted off, leaving the glowing landscape of Avalora behind, Lyra knew one thing clearly: she would never underestimate humans again. And she would carry the memory of their courage and the image of Evan's calm, determined eyes with her for the rest of her life. The stars stretched endlessly above, silent witnesses to the courage and spirit of a species that many had misunderstood. Lyra smiled, finally at peace with what she had learned. Humanity was extraordinary, and she had been lucky enough to see it firsthand. The future was uncertain, and dangers would come again, but one truth remained clear: humans were capable of more than anyone had ever believed. And she knew that the galaxy had only begun to understand what they could accomplish, because when she looked into Evan's eyes one last time, she understood something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, thinkers, and protectors. And their spirit would endure, no matter the odds, and Lyra would never forget it.